Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with trainer and author Juliet Lever. Juliet is a master coach, author, trainer, as well as a hypnotist and a NLP coach. She's also the owner of Relaunch My Life, which is a passionate platform around teaching individuals and coaches skills to create empowerment and alignment in their life and business. On this week's episode, we talk about gratitude, soul deaths, knowing your values, financial freedom, when your mirror meets your shadow, and much, much more. Guys, Juliet is a jet, and I actually studied under her for my hypnotist or hypnosis certification as well. So well worth listening. She's a Jedi, as is her partner, Paul. Hope you enjoy the episode. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. Juliet Lever, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Blake. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Lots for us to chat about. How long ago was it we were hanging out online? I was doing your course.
You did the hypnotherapy course, I reckon it was maybe 5 or 6 months ago now.
Yeah. Time goes really quickly. For those listening, these guys run a serious operation, very smart, both Juliet and her partner, which I think he's coming on next week. So looking forward to speaking to him as well. We'll go down different paths, no doubt, over the course of the interview. But can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am one half of Evolve and Relaunch Education. So the co-founder, we are a personal development training company and we teach evolved NLP training. So we really adapted and evolved our delivery of these courses, as well as hypnotherapy and other tools and programs to really help elevate and shift your mindset, but also more importantly, like your quality of your experience in the world. And that's really what started my journey. I got to my sort of mid to late 20s and started getting these, I guess at the time I labeled them as anxious feelings, but now in retrospect, 10 years on, I can see them as like soul tugs and soul urgings saying, wake up, Juliet, you were not born to work for a corporate company, make lots of money and just pay the bills and get drunk on the weekend and live in a passionless marriage. Like that's not why you were born. And my journey has really been listening to that. And I coined the term relaunch my life back in the day because I literally in the space of 12 months, quit my corporate job, ended marriage. I'd been in that relationship for 11 years and did the whole eat, pray, love thing, really started that discovery of finding who I am. And so the courses that I'm so fortunate to be able to teach alongside Paul now are a big part of my journey and what helped me unlock my deeper potential.
What was the inner dialogue like for you at those crossroads? And the guests that we have on have such similar kind of stories, those crossroad moments where I'm guessing potentially you would have had people around you saying, stay in this marriage, stay in this job, even in a dialogue of like, is this the right, path to take? Am I taking a risk? What do you remember as the inner dialogue for you at those crossroad moments?
So many things. I absolutely had the well-intended friends and family thinking that I was insane for making the choices I was. I look back now and I remember girlfriends saying to me when I would complain about my relationship, for example, which, I think there's a time and a place for complaining about relationship. And in that relationship, it really was time for it to end, right? And I remember my girlfriend saying to me, just be grateful that you're married. Like there's no good men out here. Be glad that you're married. There's no good men. And I'm so grateful I did not share that belief structure because I was fortunate to meet my beautiful partner, Paul, months later. And we're still together and having lots of fun in the world. And I think as well, a lot of the the headspace that I had, I did have to unravel a lot of layers of fear, a lot of layers of programming, a lot of layers of not caring what other people think. And that was really what had built the prison that I was living in. So it was a way of me. I vividly remember, say, for example, the day I left my marriage, thinking of my two paths that lay out in front of me. You know, what's my life going to be like in 5 years' time if I stay? And I imagined I'd be a couple of kilos heavier. I'd probably have a couple of kids, be pretty miserable. And then I imagined, well, what will my life be like in 5 years if I leave? And I'd been with my ex since I was 16. So I didn't know. That blank canvas was like, it was scary. And yet I realized that if I didn't go for it, it was like committing soul death. Like I wouldn't have physically done anything, but it would have been like soul suicide in a way, because it was me saying, actually, I need to listen to myself and I need to just go for it and be able to paint that canvas myself. So yeah, the inner dialogue was all over the place. And that's where I really started my love for journaling, which I think is just a fantastic tool for getting more awareness and what's actually creating your reality, which, you know, everything we're thinking and saying to ourselves is creating our world. And it's not the situation or the thing, it's what we're saying to ourselves about it that will determine if we're experiencing misery or if we're okay with our circumstances, with the knowledge that we want to shift and change things. So yeah, it was a big journey. It was a big unraveling. And I suppose that's also a part of why I wrote my book, because it was the book that I really would have loved to read at the time where I was feeling afraid to take steps into the unknown, at the time where I was trying to figure out, well, who am I and what am I meant to do in this world? And so it's kind of like a companion guide with activities to help the reader really uncover what's going on for them, because we do live in a really noisy reality, and we do live in a reality where distraction is pretty easy, and you can live an entire life filled with distraction. But yeah, I believe like one of my favorite sayings is the hard road gets easier. The easy road just gets harder. So I am a big advocate, and like my sisters, they all call me stupid brave. I'm a big advocate of taking those stupid brave decisions and trusting and going for things, and really recognizing, you know, we all only do get this life to really maximize our opportunities and where we're at. So yeah, you got to listen to yourself, because in the long term, I think it gets harder personally.
I love it. I completely agree. What did you spoke obviously of the book there. What did you need from a kind of self point of view? What do you think you potentially needed from those around you at that transition period? And obviously everyone was well-intended and had your best interests at heart. But what do you think, upon reflection, you needed within self and also you needed from those surrounding you?
You mean in terms of making all those changes?
Yeah.
Oh, lots of things. Obviously, peeling back a lot of the programming, a lot of the stuff that I felt not good enough around, and all of those things. But I think what's really common for a lot of us when we are going through growth or change is you start attracting new people into your circle. And so that was a big thing for me, is I started studying everything and anything I could. At the time, back in the day, meditation wasn't cool. I remember going to my first like meditation workshop at, you're from SA, so you'll know the WEA. It's like a old school learning. That's the only place you could learn about meditation really back then. And I remember walking in, and I was the youngest person by about 50 years. And I thought, like, where's all the 25-year-olds? Where's all the people like me started learning meditation? And now look what's evolved in the last 10 years. And so I needed new people, new ideas, people who were walking that different path. And I needed to look outside of my current friendships, relationship, for example, to get examples of that. Definitely, I also needed to just quiet the outside world. And so, you know, going inward, journaling, meditating, talking out loud to myself, all of those things were things that really helped me build this well of self-awareness, but also this deep friendship with myself, where the decisions I started making were from a place of, what is the most loving, highest thing I can do for me right now? And it might sound a little, if I can use the favorite word like of the moment, narcissistic, but I think a healthy level of narcissism, because I was in a different reality where I was putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. And that was the life that I had created. So I had to almost take a dose of the opposite and start to put myself first. And I had to be okay with people in my life saying, oh, you're being kind of selfish right now. Oh, you're only focusing on yourself. And that needed to happen for a while for me to figure out who that self even was. I think if you don't focus on yourself, you can't give yourself that gift. And then you can kind of achieve a healthier expression than once you've done the unraveling and the, relaunching, I guess.
How do you see life differently now that you've relaunched it? In terms of what was the energy like on a Monday morning previously? What was that kind of energy and feelings towards relationship? What was the energy and feelings towards life? And now, 10 years on, how does that look different for you?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say, I do believe we're always evolving and relaunching new versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
The big one, like the big turnaround of the course correct, absolutely. It's almost unrecognizable. And I'm sure you've heard people say that as well. And I suppose that can sound scary if you're on the other side of that, but it's to paint that picture of whatever you're desiring, whatever you dream is possible for you, you can just take like one step per day towards that. And that's all you need to do. And sometimes one step is just setting a boundary and saying yes to you and something that you want to do. Maybe that's the small step. But if over 5 years you've taken a step every day, your life is going to look almost unrecognizable if you're listening to what's true for you. Oh, Mondays are great now. Mondays are awesome. I get to hang out with my best friend, Paul, and we get to plan our week and, share our wins from the previous week. And we go out for breakfast every Monday and we have like a meeting, and it's, at maybe 9 or 10 after we've both trained. And sometimes, I don't know if this ever happens to you where you live, because you might not have as much peak hour traffic. We don't have a lot here in Adelaide either, but every now and then I will get stuck in peak hour traffic and I will be like straight back into that corporate girl that used to drive into work every day, sit in traffic. And I will be so grateful for not having to, sit in pointless meetings. And I was just, I think, for most of my 20s, I was just running in that fight or flight stress response of, not feeling good enough. And now it's almost impossible to remember what that's like. So it's a good question to ask. But yeah, it's wildly different. It's really quite different. Yeah.
How long have you and Paul been together now?
What are we, 2013? We met in 2014. So nearly 9 years.
9 years. How have you seen your relationships, both with him and your previous partner, change over the course of, I guess 20 years based on the 11 and the 9, but as you've evolved, what have you noticed in terms of how your relationships have changed?
Yeah, well, I mean, it might sound cliche, but the only relationship we ever really have is our relationship with ourselves, I believe. And then our intimate partner is a really great reflection of us as well, right? And of where we're at and what is that shadow trait that our partner is bringing to us as well. And so, Paul's a beautiful man. And I often say to him, like, look how great my shadow is because you're my partner. Like that's a sign that I'm doing some good stuff. And yeah, in my previous relationship, I believe everyone is a part of our journey. And I know that I manifested my previous relationship for a really important lesson and learning. I was, when I met him, I was a 16-year-old girl that, my highest value was partying and having fun. And when he met me, that was his highest value as a guy in his early 20s, right? And then 10 years on, his values were still kind of partying and having fun. But I was now a 26, 27-year-old woman that my values were like health, well-being, meditation. And so it was the shift in the values that really displayed to me, there's nothing wrong with this person. We're just probably going to keep not seeing eye to eye the more I figure out who I am and what my values really are. Paul and I, we have different values as well, but we see now how our values support one another. And we obviously are both really committed to doing our own inner work, which I know I was listening to your beautiful podcast with Shani the other day. And, I think that the more you as individuals are doing your own work, the more the relationships just has that ease. It's like the oil that just allows everything to flow. So I 100% agree with that. So I am just super grateful that I have a partner that is also doing this work, not only doing the work, but obviously teaching a lot of the work as well, which is phenomenal. That doesn't come without its own challenges, actually. I was reflecting on how I think a lot of women say they want an awakened man, but it was confronting for me the first few years in our relationship, because I was like, oh shit, I'm not the more evolved one here. Like, as in, I was used to being on my high horse in my past relationship and making my ex wrong and being in that reality. I was, young, that sort of thing. And now it's like, oh, I've actually got to show up and own my shit and look at all my stuff. It's not as sexy as it sounds on the outside, I feel like. So yeah, that's been a really cool reflection. One of the things I love as well, obviously, I teach the NLP training here at Evolve and Relaunch Education, and Paul also, we teach that together. And one of the biggest things is like, I never look at him as the man he was yesterday. I look at him as who he is in this moment right now, because that presence that I have with him and that I have with anyone I interact with, like, you're not the same person you were 2 days ago. You've had different thoughts, feelings, you've had different conversations. You're literally physically not the same person. And I think in my previous relationship, I stacked and saw him as the 10 years. And so it wasn't that, and I wanted to see him differently, but I kept kind of like, bringing all of that into it. So I think that's something that is a gift that you can bring to your relationships with, be it children, partners, co-workers, is who is this person in this moment right now, not who is the person that I'm, thinking of all the past interactions that we've had and projecting who I think they are on right now, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's a beautiful skill to learn, which may take people a bit of time, but love it as well. One of the things that you mentioned in there, which you speak of so kind of candidly because you've been in this space for so long, but a lot of people may underestimate, is the importance of, one, understanding your values, but in an intimate relationship, understanding and respecting someone else's values. What's the difference between your values, and what for you potentially might be the difference between, we could say, a conscious relationship and how they see values, and potentially a relationship that doesn't understand that bit and how that becomes a clash?
Yeah, it's huge. I'm glad you rewound on that, because literally our values are the most important thing to us. And for most of us, we're unconscious of them. We don't even really know what they are. But a good indication can be, if you're thinking someone's doing something wrong, it's probably because you're perceiving something that is in conflict with one of your higher values. And most conflicts in relationships will be because of a conflict in values, or a conflict in a perception of that what they're doing is impacting your values negatively. And that's a skill as well that we love to encourage and educate people in our community to develop, is this zooming out capacity to look at, okay, well, what are my partner's highest values? And those of you listening at home, you don't even always need to ask your partner. Just think about and notice, where do they spend most of their time, energy? What do they talk to you most about? You'll get a pretty good idea of the top three. And when you think about that, you can start to communicate to them in their values, but you can also notice what your highest values are and how they actually support one another. And if you can have, open conversations about how they're supporting one another, then, when he's out doing whatever he's doing, you're not mad about it. You're recognizing, oh, that's fulfilling that value, and that adds value in this way. I remember a couple of years ago, Paul and I were doing a heap of work on our values. And at the time, his highest value was financial freedom. And my highest value was like relationship connection. And we literally had the most incredible aha moment that the best way to support financial freedom for him was for our relationship and connection to be really strong, and vice versa, for our relationship to be strong, for us to have that financial freedom and build our business and our, grow those sorts of things. And because he realized, well, yeah, if we break up, the business fails, we've got to sell houses, that's going to go against my highest value. So yeah, the relationship really is really, and so if you can start to connect it in those ways and see a lot of people, maybe let's just use some typical stereotypical gender roles, please forgive me, I'm just going to do it for the ease of a conversation, right? Let's say that there's a mom at home and her highest value is family, right? And so then, of course, the partner, their highest value needs to be probably providing security, financial freedom, something like that. Because if they're both, the highest value is family, and if no one's looking after that, then that's going to cause issues, right? So rather than get annoyed at that partner for always working, if you can see that as, oh, wow, they're supporting our family and and then the person that's out working, great. It's so good that they're focused on the family, because that's supporting me to be able to go out here and do the things. And so the more you can see it as that team, then the more you're going to not just see their actions, you're going to see the why beneath their actions and their behavior. And it's fascinating. Like, I mean, obviously, we dive a lot deeper into the different kind of things that can come up in terms of like values conflicts that people can perceive, but not only with your partner, but within yourself. Because sometimes people will have a values conflict where they might have, say, their business as their highest value, and then health as their second value, and then, financial freedom as their third value. They might actually perceive that an action they're taking is conflicting with one of those lower values. And so they'll call it self-sabotage, but we're generally not sabotaging ourselves. We're always living in alignment with our values. And those are things that you can find out more about, and you can actually start to clear and align. And so it's interesting. One light side note, values we spend days talking about in Master Prac. I think we spend 3 or 4 days on Master Prac. So forgive me. I know we've only got like 45 minutes today. I'm trying to talk as quickly as I can because I'm so passionate about this stuff, and it's life-changing to get it. But, if you can understand that your values are even more unconscious than your beliefs, right? But your beliefs stem from your values. So in every key area of life that you have values, say health, you will have certain supporting or non-supporting beliefs. In relationship, you'll have supporting, non-supporting beliefs around relationship. Finance, career, all of those things. And so sometimes those beliefs, when we can clear those up, working with, an amazing coach or finding out how to shift those things, then your values will actually start to reorganize in a healthier expression as well. So absolutely, values are the most important thing. So important in relationship, but also for you to understand yourself and why you're doing the things you are. Very common side note. Often I'll see people comparing themselves to other people, let's say online, on social media. They'll see, oh, there's a person that's doing this, this, and this in their business. They're amazing. And they'll compare themselves to that person. But that person probably is doing those things because they have a very different value set to you. So if you can look at, well, what would it indicate to me that where they spend their time, their money, their energy, their thinking, are they the same as mine? And if they're different, maybe you've got different values, then don't compare your results to someone who has that different filtering mechanism at play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm interested in your thoughts on values when it comes to relationships. And the most common question I get asked is, or the most common question I get asked and the biggest fear is like, can it work if we're really different in terms of valuing growth, more so from females than males? And the fear being that they will outgrow their partner if one person values growth and one person doesn't. My belief, from more half research, half kind of observing, is absolutely it can work, and it is a lot easier with similar values. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's interesting because if your highest value is growth, your partner is growing, but in things that are on high values for them. So in what ways are they growing that might be different to the ways that you're growing? Maybe yours is more personal growth. Maybe theirs is growing the business or growing their career or growing their friendships or something. Like they're going to be growing in something, right? So that's definitely interesting. It's obviously going to be context dependent and dependent on the relationship. So there'll always be exceptions to the rule. But I think contrast is a really beautiful thing. But I have to, hand on my heart, say that as someone who did end my marriage, it was the right thing, because there's a certain point where I think you need to make that decision on, am I going to thrive in this environment, or is this person projecting their values on me so much that I'm having to change who I am in order to be and to be loved? And that's the difference. I feel like the couples and the relationships where they've got really different values, I know they're different and I love them anyway, acceptance, versus, oh, our values are different, that's not okay. We have to, love the same things and try and change them and fit them in. And that's one thing. Like Paul and I, we travel. I love travel. Paul loves being home with his chihuahua, And he's way more introverted than me. And so I'll go out to family things without him a lot. And my family members might project on like, oh, their relationship's not great. But I know our relationship's great. I'm just not going to force him to go somewhere because I know he needs to recharge. And so I think if you know who you are and you know who your partner is, then those societal projections that sometimes play into what people think about their relationships, that can ease as well. So yeah, I think absolutely they can benefit. Contrast is beautiful. I remember I met someone who was like, yeah, I meditate. I meditate by riding my bike. Right. And who am I to judge that that's not a meditation practice? So it's the same sort of thing with values. Even if their values aren't the same as yours, look at, how they're true for them, and also think about how their values are actually supporting yours. So.
It's what you just said then, again, so candidly, but so important and so rare, I think, at least from my experience, is honoring their own value hierarchy. And not making Paul do anything that he doesn't want to or that's misaligned. Like people, so Shani and I do exactly the same thing. It's like she's more social than I am. And I guess a former pattern of hers would be to think that I need to be more social, but forgetting that, the nature of our work means that we're always kind of with people connecting, whether it's one-on-one, group programs, et cetera. And like,
that battery's getting well used.
Fuck,
I know you and Paul are so similar with that. Yeah.
Depleted big time.
Yeah.
But she's so good now. And it does take a really good understanding of both self and other to not be pulled into story from other people of like, he should be here. That's rude. It's like, nah, he's all good. He's an introvert and he needs a lot more kind of downtime than the average person. So it's such a beautiful kind of and strong trait that you spoke of that I think would be amazing for more relationships if they could really comprehend just how valuable that is.
I agree. I think a lot of the societal norms, a big problem in a lot of circumstances, a lot of relationships, but also I guess it's perceptions and projections from people who, if their partner didn't do those things, what would that also show isn't okay in their relationship? Whereas if someone projects that I don't have a good relationship because Paul doesn't do something, that's their stuff. And so they're obviously judging their relationship based on what their partner does or doesn't do. That's not what I judge my relationship on. I judge on our connection, on our honesty, on our fun, and so tick, tick, tick. I have those things. That's what's important to me in relationship, not maybe what's on the opposite. So yeah, I think it's easy for me to say as a throwaway statement, but, depending on those listening and what kind of relationships people are in, it can be an interesting thing to sort of navigate. But I think at the end of the day, you're the only one that has to live by you in your decision, your life. You're the love of your life, right? You're going to have every meal together. You're going to be with yourself on your last dying breath. So you better start making decisions that are good for you, not for, everyone else. And I think that's probably been the biggest thing that I've accepted and learned. And I think it amazes and astounds me the amount of people that I meet in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s that are still making decisions for other people. And, that's what I'm passionate about, helping people unlock and just actually, embrace a bit of healthy narcissism. Why do I want to say that? I think it's because actually, I'll tell you why. I asked today, what topics would you love to hear about on my podcast? And someone said, I want to hear about why I keep attracting narcissists. And I started writing a whole heap of different ideas. And the first one was, one of the biggest pieces of a narcissist is that they're highly self-absorbed. So what if you just started, if we think of shadow, someone who triggers us the most, it's showing us something we're not allowing ourselves to be a lot of the time. So what if you allowed yourself to have a healthy expression of self, putting yourself first and that sort of thing. So anyway, I digress.
It's a warm topic for you, I can see. What have you noticed when it comes to obviously the impact that both you and Paul have on kind of the inner work? How has your inner work and inner world affected your outer world in terms of the quote unquote reality that you have created for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, late last year, we built like a big photo board of all the students that we've ever taught, and it was massive. And I think that's something I would have always loved to imagine I could do, 10 years ago, but having that manifest in reality and have people on the daily tell us their relationships have changed, their lives have changed. Now they're quitting their job and starting to do what they want to pursue their dreams. Like the ripple effect of, I think the ripple effect of any one of us actually doing what lights us up and what we really want to be doing in this world, it definitely has that ripple effect of giving other people not only permission, but like an invitation to step into that for themselves in whatever their unique expression is of what they're meant to be kind of doing here. But I think as well, I mean, even I guess, not that I want to focus so much on financially, but I think that's a big piece, because for me, that was a big challenge for me in the first few years of having my own business, from that transition out of being an employee in the corporate world to having my own business. And I think when you're a coach, you're your brand as well. And so the first few years for me were definitely around navigating my worth and receiving and financial sides of things. So I think now that, our investment properties and things are like growing and things like that, that's a really powerful manifestation and a reflection for me of that growth, of making that stable foundation for myself, not only in my internal world, but it being reflected externally, that it's okay, and letting go of any of that old programming of, anything around judgment around wealthy people or things like that, like all those layers of having to peel those things back and just saying, you know what, this is okay. And it's safe to be these things, and it's safe to have these things. And so that's been a really big one. But, even just on a granular scale, every time I pick up my book and I'm like, oh, I wrote a book, like that's like a physical manifestation. Because I still remember a couple of months after I'd ended my marriage, I went to Bali, did the whole eat, pray, love thing. And I was on a retreat and I was on a silent day, and I wrote a bucket list. And one of the things, I wrote a couple of things on my bucket list that I remember. One was, I'd love to start a business in 5 years. That was what I thought was possible. And then I'd love to write a book someday. And I'd love to take women to Bali on retreats. And I did all those things in the space of like 18 months. And that's, I think, a really profound thing of the reflection of doing the inner work, because I studied the NLP, obviously, with Paul, did the hypnotherapy, peeled back all these layers. And then I just thought, well, why can't I do these things? And previously it was like looking at all the ways that I couldn't, and I wasn't good enough, and I didn't have anything to offer. And I think just shifting and giving yourself permission to step into, well, what can I offer? And if it just helps one person, I have a duty to do these things, really, is my belief. So there's a lot of people holding themselves back. And obviously I help people write books as well. And I meet a lot of people that I actually heard someone do a speech at a birthday a couple of years ago, and she was like nearly 80. And she said, I've been wanting to write a book my whole life, but I just haven't had time. And I was like, wait, you've had all the time that you could possibly have. Like, you've had your whole life. You've definitely got time. So yeah, I think just letting go of the excuses and letting people have permission to do what they want to do. And you have to give that to yourself. I think a lot of people are waiting for other people to do that. So I guess that would be some of the physical manifestations that I've seen of the inner work of doing and achieving things that I didn't believe were possible.
Talking of the inner work, how has your ability to bring awareness to and move through stuff changed maybe over the last 5 years compared to the first 5 years? If you've been kind of in the space, maybe a bit longer than that, if I got my timeline right. But how do you move through things differently now as opposed to how you might have at the start of your journey?
Yeah, I think that's a big question, actually. Let me just
process it. Take your time.
Consolidate all of those years and all of the transitions. I mean, I do think you build muscles, and our trainings really, I believe, help people become like the most mentally, emotionally fit that they can. And it's like a 7-day boot camp of becoming mentally, emotionally fit, peeling back, seeing all your layers. And so then, having been in that space and teaching now for nearly 9 years, it is so unconscious. I was doing a podcast the other day, and the lady that interviewed me studied with us a few years ago, and she said, I still remember my first phone call with you, and now I can remember you were talking and you were using hypnotherapy and NLP. And I'm like, yeah, but that's just how I communicate, and it's designed to help release resistance and help you step into who you really are. Like, I'm not trying to change anything other than help you step into your brilliance and see that for yourself, right? And so I think it just does become really unconscious. And so I'll be very quick to, I guess, if something does trigger me, I'll be really quick to notice my projections, notice my shadow, notice, okay, like in my book, I talk about the 4 different mirrors. So I'll just have like a quick process of like, okay, is this person showing me how I used to be? Are they showing me how I want to be? Are they showing me how I am? Or are they showing me that which I most judge and disown and deny? And I'll just do like a quick, like, oh, it's that. And then I'll do the little list in my mind of like, oh, this is the stuff. And then I'll literally like feel that energy coming back into my being. And I mean, shadow work that we go through in our master practitioner training as well, I think you really get through the processes that we guide, like it's not just a logical understanding of how everyone that we see is a reflection of us, but you get it at like a mental, emotional, spiritual, physical level. That's really profound. And it just means that you're not giving so much of your energy away to things and people and stuff that's, triggering you. And so that's definitely just gotten easier. And I would say I don't spend a lot of headspace on stuff. Like I can remember definitely in the first few years, I was figuring things out and unraveling things and having these profound, healing experiences. And now it's maybe a little bit more just like, oh yeah, okay, it's cool. It's not like the shine is gone, but it's like you can start to see patterns and layers in everything. And so I guess the patterns it's like, Neo in the Matrix, I guess. You just go, oh, okay, that's a bit this, and it integrates and it makes sense in that way. So I don't know if that answered your question. It was a good question. I'll probably meditate on it.
Yeah, it does. And it's worth thinking about. I noticed, and even thinking about your students that have come through the program and then into the lab, like when I think about the guys in our program in the second year, or even some that have been, in the kind of system for 3 years, the rate at which they see things and then move through things is like life-changing, as opposed to, some of our friends who don't do the work, like they're still talking about the same problem for 5 years. And I don't think it's a lack of ownership. I think it's a lack of awareness for some of them. So the ability for these guys to see stuff and just move through it, and also move through it with so much more ease and grace than the clunkiness of when you're starting the process, is a real clear indication for me of the difference between first, second, and third year in terms of the work. So you answered it nicely.
And I think it's easier to see things that you've moved through. If you're still at that logical level and you're still challenged by it, it's hard to see the
cool.
layers. Yeah.
Yeah. Good call. Great call. For those that want to find out about you guys, the courses that you do, your book, anything else, where's the best spot for them to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are just about to launch our brand new book called Evolve Your Mind. So that's going to be out very soon. So our website is evolveandrelaunch.com.au. You can find out all details there. You can chat to us about courses or anything. If you mention Blake's details, you will get a refer a friend discount. You get a little credit towards the course of $100 as well. And we're on social, so Instagram, Evolve and Relaunch. We've got some free downloads as well, some mini courses on our website. There's a really great one called From Fear to Clear, which is a really cool process that you can go through to get out of overwhelm and just get into action. So that's available on our website too. So I'll share all the links with you.
Awesome. I did your money course as well, and I loved it. It. So definitely check out their courses. And as we said right at the start, I did hypnosis. And as many of you know, I'm a big fan of NLP as well. So check out their stuff. Juliet, thank you for coming on and providing us with so many insights and wisdom.
Thank you, Blake.